All right. Well, welcome to Introduction to Vedic Astrology Part 2. This is the class that got interrupted last week because we had it set on a questionable day and time. And again, as I mentioned last week, one of the ways that you find out if something works is to really try it in real life. And what was questionable about last week? In general, when the ruler of a negative house, houses 6, 8, or 12, is conjunct the ascendant, which is you, then that tends to give problems, obstacles, difficulties. Now, it can be good for some things if you're doing 8th house stuff like Tantra, Tantra, or Ayurveda, or even Jyotish. But as we saw last week, there are difficulties associated as well. So welcome everybody. Any questions before we get started? I'm gonna just launch in here and start over, start the class again from where we were. But any questions before we get started?
No.
Awesome. All right, so you can all see the screen here, and this is to review. We're going to talk about the planets first. So last week we introduced the stage, the houses of the horoscope. Today we're going to introduce the actors, because a stage is just half of the equation, right? You need the actors in the stage to have the full play of life unfold. So the first planet, and by the way, we use the term planet in the Greek sense. The term planet, planetes in Greek, means a sky wanderer, something that moves through the sky. So it can be a star, in the case of the sun. It can be a moon. It can even be an asteroid or a subplanet or an invisible planet, like Chiron or Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Chiron used to be considered an asteroid. Now it's called a dwarf planet. We'll talk more about those in the actual course, Winning with Vedic Astrology, because Chiron actually plays a role. And it also does in natal astrology as well. And I'll explain how you can use Chiron and as well as Ceres. I'm sorry, Ceres is the dwarf planet. Chiron is a comet, a quasi-comet, half planet. And I'll explain how to use those in natal charts as well as contest charts. So the term planet means anything that moves through the sky. All right, so the sun fundamentally is considered a malefic. This is an important designation for two reasons. And in fact, I'm going to turn on my camera here just to let you guys see me, because when I talk, I like to use my hands. So, can you guys see me okay? So I'm going to assume that's so. Two reasons, okay? Number one, because in medical astrology, these malefics, particularly the Sun, Mars, Saturn, and the Rahu-Ketu axis, we count them as one. When any two or more of these combine in a house, they're going to indicate trauma or surgery to the part of the body indicated by that house. So the first house indicates the head, the second is the face and the neck, the third is the shoulders, and some people take the chest as well. The fourth, or the upper chest, the fourth is the actual chest and breasts. The fifth is the upper stomach, The sixth is the lower stomach. The seventh house is the internal sex organs and the kidneys, urinary tract. Eighth house is external sex organs. Ninth is the hips and thighs. 10th is the knees. 11th is the calves, and the 12th is the feet. So when there are malefics, two or more of these, Sun Mars, Saturn Mars, or Sun Mars Saturn, especially when there's three, it'll indicate surgery. to one of those areas in the body. So it's important in medical astrology. In games and in contest prediction, it's also important because these are the planets we use for the first technique I taught you in the first free class, which is malefics, Sun, Mars, Saturn, Rahu, and Ketu, when in the Upachaya houses, houses 1, 3, 6, 10, and 11, will create fight. So we need to memorize what are malefics, what are benefics. So the Sun is a malefic. So again, these malefic planets will create a fighting spirit and strength, physical strength in the person that they indicate when they are in houses 3, 6, 10, 11, and 1. All right, so the Sun is a malefic. It's considered cruel and hot. As I mentioned last week, those of you who are here for the half class that we did, every planet aspects influences the house that it sits in, as well as the opposite house. That's represented as 1-7. So for example, and this is, I mean, some of you, for some of you, this is, you already know this, but I'm trying to cover all of the bases. So let me share my screen here to the chart, just so we can well, all right, in any case, not letting me share my, let's try this again. Share screen, Roshar's light, no go. Yeah, sorry about that, folks. So I was trying to show you a chart and to show you how the planets aspect. Perhaps I will show you another way. There we go. So in this chart, so hopefully all of you can see this. Yes, this is a chart for the moment. So here is the Sun in the 11th house. The Sun will influence the house that it sits in. In fact, every planet does that. And it will also influence the house 7 away. So counting from itself, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is the 7th house. We always count counterclockwise, okay? Counterclockwise. So from itself, the Sun influences the 5th house. That is the case for every planet. So Mercury from here, from the 10th house, will influence 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the 4th house. So that's what's meant by the 1-7. Every planet does that. Saturn does that too. From here, he will influence the 3rd house. Okay, so you have to become fairly competent at this. Next. All right, so the Sun owns the sign Leo and is exalted in Aries. We're going to go into these in a little bit. The persona of the Sun is the king, is a middle-aged man with authority, about a man in his 50s and with authority. The quality is conservative, steady, and the Sun likes to stand alone. So that's why you don't get married on a Sunday, because think about it, the Sun doesn't need any help. If your marriage is a spiritual marriage, then perhaps marriage on a Sunday is okay, but one person is going to be the boss in that marriage because the Sun doesn't like a second. Getting married on a Thursday is perhaps a better day, since Jupiter, moving to Thursday, Jupiter rules Thursday, is benevolent. There tends to be understanding, mutual respect, a bond between the couple. So these qualities that I'm giving you are qualities of the planet, but they also relate to everything the planet rules, including the weekday. All right? The key word is the soul and the spirit. The organ in the body is the heart. It is the center of our solar system. It is the center of the body. The nature of the Sun is that it is light. It is light, and not opposite of heavy, but opposite of dark. And as a result, sattva, which means purity, light, and harmony, is the quality. Sun is the father, pitta, and again, he's cruel, so he tends to punish, just like a pitta father does, right? You didn't do the dishes, 20 push-ups, or go to your room. All right, any questions so far about these planets and the way I'm doing this? Everything okay?
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, so next, we're going to talk about the moon. So the moon is generally considered a benefic. It also aspects 1/7 away. Here are the signs that it owns. We're going to talk about them in a minute. The persona is the queen. The moon is the archetypal feminine quality in the chart, whereas the sun is the archetypal masculine. So if a boy has the sun debilitated or weak in his chart, we'll talk about what that means. The sun is debilitated in the sign Libra. His archetypal masculinity is reduced. If a boy has the sun exalted, his archetypal masculinity is optimized. Likewise, if a boy has his moon exalted, his archetypal femininity is enhanced. So you have a boy who is sensitive, who is sensuous, who has well-adapted female qualities. And vice versa, a girl with her sun strong will also have strong male, archetypally masculine, I should say, not male, archetypally masculine characteristics. So these are regardless of your sex. The king and the queen are the yang and the yin and the yin of the chart. Okay, so and because the moon rules the senses, it has a lot to do about how we perceive reality. And so as a result, the moon in Vedic astrology is the most important planet. Everything is based on the moon in Vedic astrology, whereas in the West, it tends to be based on your sun sign, isn't it? That's what everyone knows about your, hey, what's your sign? I'm a Scorpio. That's your sun sign. In the East, it's the moon that's the primary planet. That's what your dasha sequence, the planetary period sequence, is based on. That's what your nakshatra. So for example, if this were your chart, where your moon sits would be considered the most important placement, and your nakshatra, your Vedic asterism, would be called mula. And when you go and do a ceremony, they don't ask for your sun nakshatra, they ask for your moon nakshatra, so that you can localize the effects of that ceremony to you. So when they say, Om Hrim, we now invoke this ritual for prosperity for Simon. His nakshatra is, in this case, it would be Mula, because they want to localize the effects of that prosperity to you, and so you can feel them. The moon rules the senses, so you can enjoy that prosperity, enjoy that ritual. The Vedic astrology is very focused on the moon. Yeah, your soul may enjoy it, may enjoy the ritual, but your soul, see, in my course, Decoding Your Life Map with Vedic Astrology, which you all should watch and should have watched by now, the sun shows your soul purpose. But what your soul purpose is isn't necessarily nice or pleasant. Your soul purpose may be to come and actually suffer. And so when we're trying to talk about enhancing desirable karma, we're usually talking about the moon in Vedic astrology. All right, I'll stop on this because we got a lot to do. But the moon is the most important graha, or planet, in Vedic astrology. So interestingly enough, yeah, so here's a question. Can you talk about what it means for a planet to be strong? Does it depend on the house it's in or how it aspects? Okay, good question. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But basically, the way a planet is strong if it sits in its own sign or in its exaltation sign, these two, And there are a couple other ways for a planet to be strong. If it is retrograde, it is also strong. And the planet is also strong if it has something called Digbala. So I will send you a document with these things, but we're going to cover exaltation, debilitation here in today's lecture. But that's a good question. So a planet is strong when in its own sign, so moon in Cancer. When it's exalted, moon in Taurus. And if its moon can't be retrograde, so in the case of the moon, when it's full. How do we know when the moon is full? Here is a quick tip in the horoscope. Find the sun. If the moon is opposite the sun, 7 houses away, it is a full moon. The moon is strong if it is full-ish. So here's a rule. If the moon is 6, 7, or 8 houses away from the sun, it is considered very bright and as a result strong because you can see it. It'll light up the night on a cloudless night. Sailors don't like the moon because it blocks out the stars. But for other reasons, the moon will help to light your way through the night. If the moon is close to the sun, then it's considered dark. So what is the moon in this chart? What do you think? Is it a fairly dark moon or a fairly bright moon? And as a result, is it fairly strong or fairly weak? Somebody pipe in either through chat or just unmute yourself and give me an answer. Fairly weak is the answer. Good. Dark and weak, dark and weak. Excellent. Yeah, so it's not as dark as it can be, but it's fairly dark. Now in Parashara's light, there is a way, here I just changed the screen. You can see the moon, it'll tell you it is 31% full and waning. The Tithi means the lunar phase, is the 11th of the waning. Krishna means dark, so waning. So yeah, it's 30% full. 30 out of 100 is fairly dark, but not as dark as it would be if it were here or with the sun, in which case it would be a new moon. Okay, so the moon is strong in the sign of Taurus, where it's exalted, in Cancer, where it's in its own sign, and when it's full-ish, opposite the sun. Now, why is this useful to know? Later, when we talk about setting an auspicious date for the opening of your business, let's say, or for planning a marriage, one of the rules for creating a date for something that you want to thrive in the world is to have a bright moon. So, and I'll give you the definition of the bright moon once we get to that phase, but basically it's going to be a moon that's around here in this part of the chart relative to the sun, 6, 7, maybe 5, 6, 7, or 8 or 9 houses away. But this dark moon that we have, probably it's on the verge of being an unacceptable moon. So again, the moon is very important in Vedic astrology. And if you're planning a marriage, an event, even a date, an important first date, don't do it on a dark moon. Don't do it when the moon is debilitated. Do it on a day when the moon is juicy so you can have fun on that date. Okay? All right. And if you're not sure, then see your astrologer, or if you're in my course, we can have an appointment and talk about when you should schedule your first date and go into that. So, all right, so let's get back to our handout here. So there's the moon. Mars is a malefic. Mars has the same 1-7 aspect, but Mars has additional aspects. It aspects 4 and 8 away from itself. That means that in the horoscope, here is the horoscope, Mars from its position, it will certainly influence the house that it sits in, but it'll also influence 4 away, counting inclusively from the house that it sits in. 1, 2, 3, 4. So in this chart, Mars aspects the 4th house. See if I can draw that. Mars aspects the 4th house. So 1, 2, 3, 4, then 5, 6, 7. Of course, he will aspect the opposite house as well. And then Mars's other special aspect is the 8th. So 7, and then the next house is the 8th. So in this chart, Mars will influence these 3 houses. And beginners often ask the question, well, hey, I've got so many empty houses in my chart. Does that mean there's nothing going on there? The answer is no, because a planet can influence a house with its aspect. So in this case, the 3rd house, even though it has nothing in it, is very much activated by Mars, as is the 7th house of relationships. So, and so now the question to me is, so since Mars is influencing the 7th house, is someone here having a relationship problem at the moment? Because Mars is the planet of dispute, or have you had in the last week or so? And Mars aspecting the 7th house of relationships can create disputes. All right. And actually, I had a relationship dispute, so maybe this applies not just to the students, but to the teacher as well. So I can verify that to be true, and maybe one or more of you also maybe can verify that. So that's Mars's aspect. And by the way, I'm dipping into other areas of Vedic astrology just to show you how in real life you're going to use this stuff. So there's Mars's 4 and 8 aspects. Mars rules Aries and Scorpio. If you don't know this, you need to learn this fast. The signs ruled by each of the planet. The sun rules Leo, moon rules Cancer. We're going to do this in this class, but you're going to need to know this ASAP, like right away, okay? Because it's essential. Then Mars is exalted in Capricorn, debilitated in Cancer. We'll discuss this in a bit. Mars is the general, the great warrior. The nature is tamas, so it's dark and dull. It rules siblings, brothers and sisters. And again, pitta and punishment like the sun. All right? Any questions on Mars? Next is Jupiter, the great benefic, the first and the most benefic planet. Not the first that we've covered so far, but the most benefic planet of all the benefics. This will come into play later when we look at precise timing. For example, when you see Jupiter conjunct the exact degree of the subchart, you will find it to have a profound effect on the game. We'll discuss this in Winning with Vedic Astrology. So knowing your benefics and malefics, very important. Jupiter has another special aspect. So there are 3 planets that have special aspects. They are Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. The rest of the planets simply influence 1 and 7, the house they sit in and the house opposite themselves. So Jupiter has this 5th and the 9th special aspect. Let's see what that looks like in the chart. Can someone tell me from Jupiter's placement in this chart which houses are affected by Jupiter's aspects? You guys can either text it or just say it out loud. From Jupiter's placement in this chart.
First house?
Not the first house. Now, why did you get the first house? You're counting 9 away or 7 away?
I see. Yeah, I was counting 2, 3, 7.
You're counting 7, but when we count 7, we always count inclusive. So start with the house that it sits in.
Okay.
So then that would be which house, Minta?
Is it not 12 that's 7 away from Jupiter?
That's right. You betcha. So from
7.
Jupiter, the 12th house is 7 away. There you go. That's the 7th aspect that every other planet has. Now, and a couple of you have already said this, what about Jupiter's special aspect of 5 away?
That would be 2nd house.
Right. And now the aspects go in counterclockwise. So always consider counterclockwise. Mhm.
So it would be the 10th.
Very good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the 10th house. And then the 9th aspect would be
3rd house.
count it again.
Oh, 2nd.
Yep. So you were right about the 2nd, but not because it's the 5th, but because it's the 9th aspect.
Right for the wrong reason.
Yep. And it's okay. That's okay to do that in astrology. Sometimes you'll get a bang on prediction and people go, wow, that's amazing. How'd you know that? And then you look at the chart and you realize, oh, I'm using the wrong chart. Or you don't realize how you did it. So that's okay. But for this point, we should be precise. So yes, Jupiter will aspect the 6th house where it sits, the 10th house because it's 5 away, the 12th house because it's 7 away, and the 2nd house because it's 9 away. Now, I want to do something here really quick because I have a feeling that these little Arabic numbers are helping you, but they're also not helping you. So what I'm going to do is change the ascendant of this chart. Now, can you tell me, because remember last week or the week when we talked about the houses, you ignore these numbers. These are not the houses. What are these? These are the signs of the zodiac. So 1 is Aries. The number 2 is Taurus. The number 3 is Gemini. The number 4 is Cancer. Do you remember this from our presentation last week? Number 5 is Leo. I'm taking your silence as a, I'm not sure how to take it. So I'm going to just draw in here. Now, while I'm drawing, I want you to tell me which houses does Jupiter influence now? Maybe this is better. Don't hear anyone.
Okay. 5.
So the 5th, because it's in the 5th house, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
5. The 11th house.
Very good.
7 away.
Very good. So this is the 5th house, guys. This here, even though this number says 6, that is not the 6th house. This number is the sign Virgo, the 6th sign. So very important for you to ignore these numbers for now when thinking about the houses. So Jupiter is in the 5th house, and it will aspect, yes, the 11th house, which is the opposite from itself. Very good. So go on.
It will also aspect the 9th house, 5 away from it.
Very
No,
good.
10th house. Yes. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the first house.
Yeah, very good. Now, can everybody see how Tom got there? And if you can't, please speak up. Now is the time. Now is the time for us to make mistakes, to chat, to, because once we're out in the field, that's not the appropriate time. All right, so I've written in. So what these numbers indicate is what's written in blue. The number 2 is Taurus. The number 1 is Aries, and so on. So I've written these signs in. They do not indicate the houses. The houses are always fixed. So this is always the first house. 1. This is This is always the second house. 2. This is always the third house, and so forth. Okay? Is this making sense, or are we, because if we don't get this, we're not going to get anywhere. This needs to be really solid. The houses need to be really solid. Okay? So what's in Roman numerals is fixed. The signs will change, but what these Roman numerals are fixed. Okay, got it. Okay, everybody got it. Okay, good. Thank you. Who wins is the question. No, that's not now. All right, so let's go back to now our chart. So Jupiter has the 5-9 aspect. He owns Sagittarius and Pisces and is exalted in Cancer, debilitating Capricorn. Again, we're going to leave this for a little bit. We'll come back to it. Jupiter is the counselor, the advisor, the priest, and certainly benevolent. So when Jupiter is placed in a particular house, he will tend to expand the meanings of that house. Wisdom, Sattva, Jupiter rules children in a horoscope. So along with the 5th house, which rules children, we also look at the status of Jupiter. If someone asked you, hey, am I having children? And if so, when? So Jupiter represents children in the family, just as Mars represents brothers and sisters, and the sun and moon are your mom and dad. All right, moving on to Saturn, the last of the planets with a special aspect. So again, everyone has the 1-7, but Saturn also has the 3 and 10. So let's go back to our chart and see which houses Saturn now is influencing. Oh, look, all my drawing is gone. Good. Can someone let me know all of the houses influenced by Saturn in this horoscope? I'm going to drill a little bit. If Saturn has the 3rd and the 10th special aspect. You can either say by chat or just come in on the microphone. I hear the sound of brains spinning, the wheels spinning.
So Saturn is an 8, and 3 away from it would be 10th.
Very good, Tom. Yes.
8, 9.
Counting inclusively from where Saturn sits, we get 1, 2, 3. Very good. So it influences the 8th, it influences the 10th. What else?
Was it 3 and 5 that were the special aspects?
For Saturn, it's 3 and 10. So let's see.
3 and 10, okay.
So Monique, 11 and 5. So one of those is wrong, Monique. You got 3 out of 4 correct. Just Okay. So Sylvie, that is correct. No, it's not the 6th. You were right about the 5th house. So let's look at the screen here and check them out. So Saturn definitely influences the 8th, right? The house that it sits in. Then by its 3rd aspect, it'll influence the 10th. 1, 2, 3. Then 4, 5, 6, 7. Every planet influences the 1/7 away. So there's the 7th. Which house away is the 2nd house. So yes, you were correct. And finally, 7, 8, 9, 10. Saturn will also influence in this horoscope the 5th. So Danica, so you're right, except that when you're counting, you're not counting inclusively. Inclusive means starting with the house the planet sits in. So this is 1, then 2, then 3. And remember, this is not the house. No. This number is not the house. This number is a sign. So Danica, when you said the 11th, were you looking at this here? Were you looking at the Arabic number? Or did you just count not inclusively and go 1, 2, 3, and you got to the 11th house? I want to know how you arrived at it so we can correct.
Simon, for me, I was counting the numbers in the house.
In the,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, that's where I was getting confused.
Okay,
Sorry.
good. So that's a big, right? So that's a big one to immediately, you know, correct, because this is not the house. 11 stands for Aquarius, the sign Aquarius. Okay? Aquarius. All right, Aquarius. It is not the house. What is the house is, this is always the 10th house. Okay? So remember, ignore these Arabic numerals. Pay attention to these you want to ignore for now. Pay attention to the Roman numerals when counting houses. And so Monique, you got the 6th house. I'm guessing you did the same thing where you got the right house, but you were looking at the number. Is that right? So that's probably the case. If not, then you didn't count inclusively. All right, so I'm belaboring this point because if we don't get this, we can't move forward. We can't do Vedic astrology. We've got to know what the houses are and what the signs are. All right, so to make this a little more difficult, here's what we're going to do something. I'm going to move the ascendant a couple more times. All right. So let's drill this. In this chart that you see here, which houses does Jupiter aspect? Remember, Jupiter had the 5th and the 9th aspect. Yeah, so if you're a student, this is a good suggestion. Draw the Roman numerals every time you look at a chart. That's a good suggestion.
So Jupiter's in 4th house?
Jupiter is in the 4th house. Very good. And
the 1st house's aspect?
Not the 1st house. Again, you got to count inclusively. So starting with the house Jupiter sits in. So you're right. Jupiter is in the 4th house. Now counting 5 away. Remember, Jupiter's aspects are 5 and 9. what do we get?
So 5 houses away is 9. It's the 9th house.
No, it's not the 9th house.
4, 5, 6. The 8th house.
Correct.
Oh, I missed that one.
Uh-huh. Yep.
I'm gonna say the 4th, 10th, 8th, and 12th.
Bingo. Good job. Good job. So, and tell us how you got there.
Jupiter is in the 4th house.
Very
So
good.
the house 7, the 10th house is 7 houses away.
Right. So there you go. 7 houses away is the 10th house. Good.
And then 5 houses away would be the 8th house.
Mm-hmm.
And then 9 houses away would be the 12th house.
That's right. So just what I'm doing here in not drawing the houses, you should be doing if you're having trouble with the houses. Do it every time you pull up a chart as a transparency layer or otherwise. Okay. So very good. Does everyone see that? Let me take a look at the chat here. Yes, you always count the house you start with. That is correct. Always count the house you start with. The house you start with. Very good. All right, good. So now let's do Saturn. Which houses is Saturn influencing in this chart? So let me erase Jupiter's little arrows here. And let's do Saturn. Saturn's special aspects were 3 and 10. So I'll let you guys chime in when you know. And I'll continue drawing the houses here. Voila.
Saturn aspects. It's
Very good, Monique. You're dead on. Katrina, you've got one wrong. You're right on one and wrong on the other. Tom, what do you think?
yeah, Monique has it.
Okay, that's right. So to review now, Saturn sits in which house? Well, there it is. We just drew it. It's the 7th house. Okay. Again, what are we doing to these numbers here? For right
Not looking at them.
For right now, we're not looking at them because they're going to tell us what sign the planet sits in. And by knowing the sign, that's how we know if a planet is strong or weak. But it doesn't tell us anything about the house that the planet sits in. And I know it's confusing. And why did they use numbers and not glyphs, right? So Cancer should be, in Western astrology, looks something like this. That's the glyph for Cancer, not the number 4. But in Vedic astrology, that's just how they do it. And I'm sorry. It's got to get used to it. So, all right. So yes, Saturn influences the 7th house because it sits there. Then 3 away from itself is which one? The 9th. Very good.
The 9th house.
Mm-hmm. And then opposite from itself, remember every planet looks at the opposite. In fact, an aspect is called, oh, looks like there's some internet issue. Let me turn off my camera really quick. An aspect is called looking. In Sanskrit, it's called drishti. Drishti means to see, and you can see what's directly in front of you. So yes, so Saturn will influence the 1st house because that's 7 away. And then finally, what's the 10th aspect? It is to the 7, 8, 9, 10, to the 4th house, not the 3rd. All right. Has everyone got that? Can everyone, can you guys hear me okay, by the way?
Yes.
Okay,
I can
good.
hear you.
So let's erase some of this stuff now here. All right, any questions about Jupiter, Saturn? While we're at it, let's do Mars. Mars' special aspects were 4 and 8. So which houses does Mars influence in this horoscope?
First house.
Which letters are for Mars? Which ones do you think?
First house.
Yeah, MA for Mars. And it does influence the first house with its 4th aspect. Very good. Then, of course, also the house it sits in, right?
And the 5th house.
And the 5th house with its 8th aspect. Very good. In addition to which houses?
The 10th. The 10th house it sits in.
Correct.
The first house. And the 5th house.
And then what's
Also the 4th house.
4th house. Sorry.
very good, as well as the 4th house, because every planet will look directly at the house opposite itself, which is the 7th to itself. And Mars has the oblique aspect. The 8th aspect is the aspect you will look at an enemy with, because when you see boxers or fighters, they don't stand chest to chest in front of each other. Well, maybe before the fight they do, but once they start fighting, they don't. They're turned a little bit to each other. So they're in front of each other, but not directly. And this is a case of open enemies. And when we look at relationship horoscopes, when two people have planets that are 8 houses, one is 8 away from the other, that's called an open enemy situation. And that's a case of opposites repel. It's not a good combination. But that's a topic for later on. But again, that's what that 8th aspect is, a very combative aspect. So if one person has their Venus here, and let's say my Venus is here, these two Venuses are, one is 8 houses away from the other, they're not compatible. So this is, again, I want to give you how this is used so you know how important these aspects are and everything we're learning is, and how many ways we can use it later on. Okay, very good. So let's then keep going. And if you have a question, just pipe in. Next, we have Mercury. Mercury is generally a benefic unless he's only influenced by malefic planets. Okay, in which case he becomes like the high school kid who's hanging out with a bad crowd and he kind of becomes bad himself. Back to our normal aspects, 1 and 7, which by now should be easy for you. Mercury owns Gemini and Virgo. We'll talk about that later. He's the young prince, has the quality of intellect, rules uncles, and yeah, that's all you need to know about Mercury for the moment. Then Venus, the second greatest benefic after Jupiter. Same aspects, rules Taurus and Libra, rules desire and beauty and love in the horoscope, and represents the wife or husband, the spouse. And then finally, Rahu Ketu, who are malefic. They also, they both influence the 1-7. They don't own any signs, and they're the rebels of the horoscope. One of the ways in which Rahu Ketu become particularly useful is for determining a person's dharma type, what their purpose in life is. And when Rahu Ketu sit in the ascendant, the first house of a horoscope, they'll likely, the person will be an outsider dharma type. And so their purpose in life to a great degree will revolve around individuality and freedom, innovating, and bringing something new, a unique expression in the world.
I have a question.
Yes.
For Rahu and Ketu, do they just sit in a person's dominant house, or do they roam like the other planets? Are they stationary, or do they move?
It's a good question. Yeah. So Rahu and Ketu, one of the reasons they're outsiders is that they do move, but they're different from the other planets in two ways. One of the ways is, number one, they don't have a body. They're not an actual physical body in space. They're a mathematical point in the sky. They're the mathematical point in the sky that correlates to where eclipses happen. So that's one way that they're different from planets. The second way is that they move backwards. So now every planet is headed from, for example, Saturn and Moon in Sagittarius here. Next, they're going to go into Capricorn. Moon in about a day or two will move in Capricorn, then Aquarius, then Pisces. So all the planets move counterclockwise as viewed through the horoscope. But Rahu Ketu move backwards. Rahu is going to move from Leo here in the third house to Cancer, to Gemini, to Taurus. So Rahu and Ketu move clockwise in the chart, opposite of the direction every other planet moves. So that's another thing that sets them apart, that makes them different. They are the nodes in Western astrology. It is exactly the nodes. And in Vedic astrology, some Vedic astrologers use what's called the true node, which is the exact mathematical point. But in Vedic astrology, most Vedic astrologers use what's called the mean node. Not because it's mean to its other nodes. That was a little astrological joke, not funny. But because it is technically the node moves backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards as a statistical term. Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys helping me out here. So we use the mean node. So what do we do when we go to options in one of our programs? Yes, your class in statistics definitely paid off, because now we can explain the movement of Rahu Ketu. See, when you go into your program here, you can tell if you want Rahu Ketu to be the true node or the mean node. And since I like mean people and making them more sattvic, we're going to go there. And that would have changed a degree. So watch, Rahu here is 9 degrees, 23 minutes. Let's change him back to true node and see what happens. 9 degrees, 18 minutes. So you'll see a slight variance. It can be a degree, sometimes it can be a couple of degrees, but generally they're about the same. Okay, so this is a little bit of minutia, but you should know that for Vedic astrology, we use the mean node. And typically the Ayanamsha, which is the offset between a Western astrological chart and a Vedic, the most standard is Lahiri. This one here, Lahiri. So we'll just leave it at that. Good. So if you're a statistician, you're going to do great in Vedic astrology. In fact, there was a very famous statistician named Goklan who wanted to disprove astrology. And so he did a statistical study of successful people in different fields. One was the field of medicine, another was athletics, another was law, another was philosophy and teaching, yet another was science. And what he found just completely stumped him, because he found that in a very statistically relevant way, people who were scientists had Saturn in the 1st or 10th house way more often than they should have according to statistics. So Saturn was the science planet. when positioned on exactly the first house cusp or the 10th house cusp. And we'll talk about cusps when we get to winning with Vedic astrology. Cusps are very important. But basically, the ascendant cusp here is 5 degrees 38 minutes. So when Saturn is close to that, likely you'll be a scientist. Then if Jupiter was close, it was education or religion. People were either priests or teachers. When it was Mars, they were athletes. And when it was, let's see, Sun and Mars also correlated to doctors. And I think the Sun primarily. So Gauquelin found this baffling, and like a good scientist, he published his results and said, well, this actually works. There is something to this, for which he was then ridiculed, and I think he committed suicide by the end of his life, because he spent many, many years saying, hey, no, I'm not a bad scientist. I did this right. And he was the head statistician for the French government at the time. He occupied a very high position, but he got lambasted for it. Yeah, he should have just become an astrologer, right? So if you have a mathematical scientific background, it's absolutely very useful, because you'll be able to separate the wheat from the chaff, so to speak, when it comes to what's real and what isn't in astrology. And hopefully you'll be able to make good predictions. Alrighty, so moving on. Let's move on here. And I'm just going to mute you guys. And when you're not speaking, it's better for the video. All right, so let's go back to our document. Yeah, so that's all of the planets, actually. So now what I'd like to do is move on to the presentation on the signs and the ownership and exaltation. So this is going to be a bit of a learning curve for you guys if you don't know this stuff, but all of this is necessary if you're going to go into Vedic astrology. And I know there's a lot of things to remember, starting with the houses, what they mean. Now we're talking about planets, and now we're moving into signs. So I'm giving you the accelerated program, the International Baccalaureate Honors program here. Here we go. So we're going to start with the sign Aries. Can everyone see my screen okay before I move forward? Yes? No? I can't see the chat, so you'd have to just tell me if you don't see it. All right, so the sign Aries is the battlefield. It is, so for example, if you have Aries in your 7th house of relationships, then your relationships may be sometimes like a battlefield. And that's okay. So who owns the battlefield? Think about this. Who is the owner of the battlefield? Well, it's the generals of each of the armies. They are the reason the armies are there. They are the ones who are empowered by being there. So Mars rules the battlefield, which is Aries. So Mars, when it's in Aries, feels particularly strong, feels empowered. This is where I get to serve my purpose in the world. Okay? Now, we have a concept also called exaltation and debilitation. Even though the battlefield is owned by Aries, there is a planet that happens to feel even stronger on the battlefield. And that planet is the Sun, the king. Why do you think the Sun is exalted in Aries? Oh, any thoughts?
Doesn't the sun have like a combusting effect, like it has to be at the center and it burns?
Yeah, so the sun wants to be at the center, and the light that the sun radiates, really in space, light goes on forever. So the sun wants to expand his kingdom. And when the sun sits in Aries, remember, what do battlefields do for kings and queens? They expand their empires, don't they? They win land and property and people and gold and treasure. So the sun being exalted in Aries gives an exalted, an expanded sense of power to the sun. And remember earlier when I said that a person who has the sun exalted, let's say you're a young woman and you have an exalted sun, then you will have more archetypally masculine characteristics. There will be a powerful personality, a more, maybe not aggressive, but a self-assertive type of personality. Because their sun, regardless of whether the person is male or female, is exalted. And exalted means sun in Aries. Okay? So far, so good? And who do you think out of all the planets would be debilitated, would feel the weakest on the battlefield?
The moon.
You would think the moon, and the moon, yeah, the moon isn't super happy there, but because the moon is the wife of the king and she also gets an expanded empire, Aries is not such a bad place for the moon.
Then
What
Libra.
else?
Then Aries, the opposite of Aries would be Libra. So that would be the debilitation.
No. So planets are, so every sign has a planet that rules it, a planet that is exalted when in it, and a planet that is debilitated when in it. So some of you are saying Venus is debilitated in Aries, and Venus is the princess. But here's the thing, when you put a princess on a battlefield, more than likely because she represents value and beauty, she will more than likely not be harmed. So while Venus may not be exalted or own the battlefield, she still does okay. A planet that doesn't do okay is Saturn, because Saturn is the servant. And he's the first one to get pushed to the side or skewered on the battlefield if he happens to be so unlucky as to find himself in that sign. So Saturn in Aries is said to be debilitated, weak, and unable to show his influence. Make sense? All right, well, we'll see if it makes sense here. We're gonna do a little test. So I'm gonna ask you, which house would Saturn have to be in to be debilitated in this chart? Which house? This is a tough question, okay, first of all.
The sixth house?
So the sixth house here is, and tell me your reasoning for the sixth house.
Because it is the house of enemies.
Okay, right. That's okay. I like that reasoning. And can you do the reasoning based on what we just saw with the sign Aries? Where is the sign Aries where Saturn is debilitated in this horoscope?
The 11th house.
Very good. There's Aries.
Yes.
So if you had Saturn here, would that Saturn be strong or weak?
Weak.
Weak.
Very weak, a debilitated Saturn. Very good. So, and now if I ask you which planet is the owner of the 11th house, you would say?
Aquarius.
Mars.
Mars. And why Mars? Because he rules the sign in the 11th house. So I'm having you now, do you see where we're going? We're combining a couple of things now that we've learned. I'm assuming we've learned the houses. Aries is in the 11th house. Aries is ruled by Mars. So Mars rules the 11th house. Okay? And again, if I asked you which house would the sun need to be exalted in this horoscope, you would say?
The 11th.
Again, the 11th house, because the sun now in Aries is exalted. Yes, so I am saying that Mars rules the 11th house in this chart. That is absolutely correct. Very good. All right, let's move to the next sign. We're going to do this again and again until it becomes second nature. Taurus, represented by the number 2. Taurus is you can picture this. These are aids for helping you picture the sign, and these are the real astrological meanings of these signs, or the real astrological associations with these signs. So I'm not just making something up. Taurus is ruled by Venus. Venus rules the farmer's field because that's where her lavender and her perfumed roses grow, and she loves that stuff. She loves beauty, flowers, good food, and so on. So Venus is the ruler of Taurus. When Venus sits in Taurus, she feels very happy and strong. Okay? The planet, however, that is exalted in the farmer's field is actually the moon, Venus's mom. Because yes, the farmer does grow roses and sweet things. The farmer also grows food for the kingdom, and it's the moon, the queen mother's job to feed her people. And when the moon is exalted, when the moon is in Taurus, it becomes especially powerful because the moon, the queen, feels her life purpose truly fulfilled when it's in Taurus. I want you to think about exaltation like this. Here's a more mundane example. Let's take Bill Gates. Bill Gates, when he's at his home in Seattle or wherever he lives, in his compound, feels at home. He's comfortable. He can walk around in his pajamas. He owns the place. He's strong there. But now take Bill Gates and imagine him walking into Microsoft, the offices, especially when he, ran them. Imagine that scenario of him and all of his attendants. Mr. Gates, can I get you a coffee? Oh, Mr. Gates, the president of China called. He wants to see if you have time. Mr. Gates, can I pull the car around for you? Right? Mr. Gates steps into his power, into his exaltation when he's at Microsoft. That's how it feels for a planet to be exalted. It is powerful to express itself in the world. All right. Now, the planets that are debilitated in Taurus are Rahu and Ketu. And why is that? Well, number one, no farmer likes outsiders in their field. But number two, Rahu and Ketu also rule insects and pests. And farmers especially hate pests in their affecting their crops. So the owner of Taurus is Venus. The planet exalted there is the moon. And the planet debilitated there is Rahu Ketu. So another way to view this is here in this graph, you could see the moon is exalted in Taurus. So under the moon, we have Taurus for exaltation. And for each of the, for Sun, we have Aries as its exaltation. We just covered Aries. So this is a different way to memorize it. But, and you can memorize it any way you like. So now let's go to this chart. For the moon to be exalted, which house would it have to sit in? For the moon to be exalted. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, currently it's sitting in the 7th house.
Very good. Currently it's in the 7th. It's neither exalted or in its own sign. For it to be exalted,
Would it have to be the 12th house?
yeah,
Yes, 12th house.
very good. Because which sign is the moon exalted in?
Taurus.
In
Taurus.
Taurus. And there's our Taurus, number 2 is Taurus. So very good. For the moon to be exalted, it would have to be in Taurus, which is in the 12th house. Now let me ask you this. For which planet rules the 12th house?
The moon is ruled by Cancer.
No, the moon rules Cancer. But which planet rules? So now I'm changing my definition. I asked you this about the last one. The 12th house, which planet rules the sign in the 12th house?
Venus. Venus.
Very good.
Yeah.
And now if I go a step further and say, hey, in which house does the ruler of the 12th sit?
The
In
10th.
the 10th house.
Awesome.
It's in the 10th.
Good job. There is Venus. Yes. Very good. All right. Well, let's see. You guys are getting good at this. How about if I ask you, which planets aspect the 12th house? I'm being mean. Am I being mean? A little bit.
Gemini?
So think about the question, which planets aspect the 12th house in this chart and therefore influence the 12th house?
With
Jupiter.
Jupiter.
Jupiter, very good. That was quick. Jupiter with its 9th aspect from itself. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 away. Does any other planet aspect the 12th house?
Saturn?
What are Saturn's special well, with what aspect could Saturn aspect the 12th house? So counting from itself, this is the first, this 2, 3. So Saturn does have the 3rd aspect. So it'll aspect here. Then 4, 5, oops. Well, my ability to draw here has become limited. 5, and this is 6. Does any planet aspect the 6th house away? No, it doesn't. So Saturn will not aspect the 12th. It does aspect the 1st, though. Does that make sense, Minta?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, no, good, good. This is why we're doing this. So, any other planet influencing the 12th?
It looks like only Jupiter.
Yeah, that's right. And in fact, it is only Jupiter. Very good. So you guys are getting this. Now let me switch gears and ask you which planets influence the first house of this chart. And I know I'm quizzing you a lot here, but I just want to see where we are because this is very important.
This
So
is
which?
Gemini in the first house.
Mhm.
Saturn and the moon.
So right away you saw that there are Saturn and the moon sitting opposite, and they do in fact both influence that first house. Very good. Who else, if anyone?
Mars,
Mars. And why Mars?
Mars.
because it aspects the fourth house from itself.
From itself, the fourth. So counting inclusively, we count 1, 2, 3, and there is 4. Bingo. So Mars also influences that first house. Very good. Anyone else?
Again, I think that's it. Those three.
You bet. Because Jupiter hit the 12th,
Yeah.
and those are the only planets with special aspects, aren't they? So Jupiter, Mars, and Saturn. So if a house doesn't have a planet directly opposite itself or in it, then only Jupiter, Saturn, or Mars can have a special aspect on it. And we know that Jupiter went to the 12th. So it's only Saturn and Mars that aspect with their, sorry, only Mars with its special aspect and Saturn and Moon with their regular. Good. Job, guys. All right, now let's go back to our sign. So Taurus is owned by Venus. The moon is exalted there. Rahu and Ketu are debilitated. And this stuff, you'll just have to get little cards, put them, and just start memorizing if you don't have it yet. All right, Gemini represents the bedroom or the library where humans tend to be, to conglomerate. The planet that owns Gemini is Mercury. And good news, everyone, no one is exalted and no one is debilitated there. Because the library isn't exactly a place that makes people powerful, does it? So Gemini is a pretty neutral sign, kind of like its ruler, the planet Mercury. All right. Then the next sign. So in fact, before we go on to the next, just another quick, I just want to find which house is Gemini in this chart?
First house.
First house. And the ruler of the first house sits in which house?
In the 8th house.
In the 8th. Very good. All right, you're there. All right, let's move on to Cancer. Cancer is the Queen's chamber. Think of it as a watery place where people meet, the Queen meets with her advisors. Cancer tends to represent bodies of water, wells, and so on. It's owned obviously by the moon. Moon rules Cancer. By the way, all of these rulerships are the same as in Western astrology. So if you know Western, you know Vedic. Western sometimes uses the outer planets, but so far all of this is the same. So Jupiter, the counselor, the Dr. Phil of the horoscope, finds himself best suited to being in the council of the Queen because that's where his ideas become the most powerful. He really influences the king as well, but the Queen even more. Because if you think about Queen is Oprah, Dr. Phil is her lawyer or advisor, and it's through her that Dr. Phil got his own show and fame and fortune. In the same way, Jupiter through Cancer becomes famous and fortunate. The planet that least wants to be in the Queen's chamber, can you take a guess which planet that would be?
Mars.
Mars. And why Mars? Think about Mars's personality. He wants to fight people, he wants to battle, and now here he is, he's told he has to sit and meditate and say Om and hang around with a lot of women and some priest, Dr. Phil. He wants to punch Dr. Phil in the face. Yeah, so Mars is very active and he wants to do stuff. So you're absolutely right. Mars is debilitated in Cancer. So there we go. And let's just go really quick to the chart here. For Mars to be debilitated, what house would he have to be in this chart?
The second.
The second, very good. And the ruler of the second house sits in which house?
The seventh.
Okay, very good. Does everyone get this?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to hear that everyone is still on board here. Excellent. All right, so let's keep going then with Leo, which is the king's castle and specifically the throne room. Leo, because of its representation, also rules real estate. So when people ask you, hey, should I buy this house? Which is often a question you as an astrologer will be asked. Or is this the right house to buy? And you pull the chart and you get Leo as the rising sign. That's often an indication that, yes, real estate is indicated here because we're talking about the castle, the throne room. This is the appropriate thing to do. Okay? And remember what I said, that the sun likes to be alone, so the sun rules the throne room because he's the king. But because he likes to be alone, no one there, there's no one exalted or debilitated in Leo, in the king's castle. He is the one and only. All right? All right, so moving on to Virgo. Which Arabic numeral indicates Virgo in the horoscope?
Number 6.
Number 6.
Yeah.
That's right. So Virgo represents the civilized city. It's places where there is efficiency and civilization. The ruler of that is Mercury, because Mercury is the planet of the intellect and it likes to organize things. Interestingly enough, this is the only sign in which Mercury himself is the only planet exalted there. Think of it in this way. Young teenage kids are the only ones who could figure out all the ways that an iPhone works. And they're the ones who use the iPhone and get the most out of it, and technology in general. You know, for the rest of us, we're just happy to be able to check our email. So Mercury, who rules technology, organization, and the intellect, rules Virgo, the civilized city, but Mercury is also the planet exalted there. So is he the owner or the exaltation point? It both. Mercury is a dual planet, and in this case, he's the owner and the planet that is exalted in Virgo. The planet that's debilitated in the civilized city is Venus, because at her core, Venus doesn't want to be judged on her looks and her appearance and her dress. She just wants to be naked on a deserted island, feeling at one with the ocean and the elements. Venus is raw beauty, and raw beauty is okay in the civilized city, but it's hard for it to really flourish, to really connect. So Venus is debilitated in Virgo. So looking at the chart, first of all, which house is the ruler of Virgo in?
Eighth house.
In the 8th house,
Fourth.
that's right. All right. And for Venus to be debilitated, she would have to be in which house?
The fourth.
The 4th
10th
house.
house?
Very
Oh,
good.
okay, I see.
Because there is Virgo in the 4th house.
Yeah.
All right. Now, I know we're getting on to an hour and a half here, but I do want to finish the presentation, so I'm going to go a little bit faster here, if that's okay with you guys. It looks like you're getting this, and this is just a point of memorization. All right, Libra. Libra represents the merchant's bazaar, a place of commerce. In Vedic astrology, Libra is not what we think it is. It ruled by the scales and justice. It is the scales, but they're the scales of the merchant that weighs, gold versus silver, et cetera, et cetera. So the planet that owns Libra, just like in Western, is Venus. The planet that is exalted in Libra is Saturn. Why do you think Saturn is exalted in Libra?
It's fair.
Yeah, that's a good point. Saturn is fair and okay, yeah.
Wants to serve.
And he wants to serve. And who does Saturn serve?
The princess.
Princess.
The princess and the royal family, right? The king, the queen. And when Saturn shows up at the bazaar, what do people do for him? Oh, there's the king's servant. Roll out the red carpet. Get the chai. Oh, Mr. Saturn, please come and sit down. We have your favorite cake for you. Oh, come. No. Forget them. Come over here. I found what you were really looking for, which is that arthritis cream. Come. I have it for you. He gets treated like a king because he represents the king and the queen.
And the price goes up 10%.
And the price goes up, but see, Saturn isn't paying with his own money. So see, Saturn is a very shrewd planet, and he understands what's right and what's wrong. So when someone asks too much, he'll look at them and say, oh, I'll tell the king that you're overcharging for his china. No. I meant it's worth 10% more, but no, for you, it's 20% off, definite. So Saturn gets to be the boss. You see, he gets to, and so in fact, Saturn does act in a very exalted way when he sits in Libra, like Bill Gates at Microsoft, or like Saturn at the bazaar. Now, who do you think would be? Go ahead.
Isn't it because also Saturn basically means boundaries? So it has a really set of rules. So it means for a stable market, it's fair, but it has a rules to abide by. It's
Saturn is a very conservative and stable planet. You're absolutely right. And when it influences a chart, it'll tend to a game chart. It'll tend to produce a low-scoring conservative game. It'll also tend to produce. So just knowing that, people can make a lot of money because there's a way to wager on whether the game will be a high-scoring or a low-scoring affair. And so Saturn is right. He's bear markets. Wait, bull is bear markets also rules over that. So absolutely, yeah, Saturn is the old conservative butler. Now, who would be the planet you think would be debilitated there? And by the way, before we even do that, there's another reason Saturn is exalted in Libra. Libra represents the sign, it's the 7th sign, which is in the natural horoscope, it's the 7th house, where the sun dies, where the sun's power sets. And where the sun sets, Saturn gets to, see, when the sun goes to sleep, when the king goes to sleep, Saturn gets to roam through the kingdom because he has all the keys. So he can even sit on the throne room if he wants, on the throne. And he can open all the chests and play around. So that's another image there to explore. So who do you think would hate to be at the Merchant's Bazaar?
The king, the sun.
The king. And why do we think the king?
Because he doesn't want to dirty his hands with the bazaar.
Exactly. And the king,
That's the job of the butler.
that's the job of the butler, exactly. And it's to think about it, in a kingdom without internet, a lot of people don't even know what the king looks like. And being a middle-aged man that kind of looks like everyone else, unless he's wearing all his robes and such, he'll just be jostled around and pushed around and nobody will know who he is. Whereas when he's sitting on his throne or in the battlefield where he's exalted, then people really know who the king is. All right. So yes, in fact, the sun is debilitated in Libra and Saturn is exalted. And you'll notice now, we're going to take a look here at the chart, that the place for exaltation for a planet is opposite its place of debilitation. So in this chart, let's review which house it was the sun exalted in this chart. Remember, the sun is exalted in Aries.
11th.
Yeah.
Ninth house. Oh, wait.
11th.
11.
Sun sits in the 9th. You're correct. But where he's exalted is where the battlefield is, in the 11th house. And which house is he debilitated in?
The 5th.
Exactly. So here's a shortcut to memorizing this, guys. Once you know the sign a planet is exalted in, its debilitation will be exactly opposite. So if the sun is exalted in Aries, it's going to be debilitated in Libra. And vice versa. Now, which house is Saturn exalted in this horoscope?
In the 5th.
Yeah, and which house is it debilitated in then?
11.
You betcha. Make sense?
Yes.
Now, we've looked at the moon. Can you extrapolate? We've looked at where the moon is exalted. Can you now tell me where the moon would be debilitated? Well, tell me both, where the moon is exalted and debilitated. So remember, the moon was exalted in the farmer's field, where all the crops are grown, and that's the sign Taurus. And if she's exalted in Taurus, then she must be debilitated in Scorpio, the opposite sign. And even though we haven't covered Scorpio yet, you can bet you that moon is debilitated there. Okay?
So the 12th and the 6th house.
Yeah, so exalted in the 12th, debilitated in the 6th for this horoscope. If I change this horoscope, let me I just want to make sure that we're clear that it's not for all horoscopes. That's just for this ascendant. Now, which house would the moon be exalted in?
And the 10th house.
The 10th house. Because that's where Taurus is. See it?
Yes.
So the moon would be exalted here and then debilitated where?
Fourth.
In the 4th house where Scorpio is. Good job, guys. Whew. All right, a little more brain gym. We're almost there. All right, so there's Libra. And so basically we've covered all the signs, all the exaltation. So now we're just coming around, you'll see what I mean. So now we're in Scorpio, which is the dark cave or the jungle. And the planet that owns it is Mars, because all the good property got given away, so Mars got the jungle. But he kind of likes it because he gets to go and fight animals in there and explore. So Scorpio is his sign. And this is also in Western astrology, although since the discovery of Pluto in 1936, Pluto has taken on associations with Scorpio. But the classical ruler of Scorpio, even in Western astrology, is still Mars. And the planet that is exalted there is Rahu Ketu. The outsiders, the thieves, they lurk in the cave. They hide in the jungle. Or if you think about them as insects, well, where do insects thrive? You betcha, in the jungle. Bats live in the caves, and so on. And who is the planet who would most dread being here? Well, it is in fact Oprah. The moon, the queen, feels absolutely useless when in Scorpio. Okay? Meow. Okay. All right, there we go. So that's Scorpio. Moving forward then, oops, excuse me. All right, questions about Scorpio. Exalted is Rahu and Ketu, debilitated is the moon, which is the exact opposite of Taurus. So if you've memorized Taurus, then you've got the exaltation, debilitation already memorized because it's the opposite. And Mars rules Scorpio. Next is Sagittarius, the mountain temple, the place where the monks live, the place that's hard to access, that represents nature. It is ruled by Jupiter, but because it is so hard to access, no one is either exalted or debilitated there. In fact, everyone is treated as an equal in the temple. There are no kings, there are no peasants. Everyone is the same. And so Sagittarius has no planets exalted or debilitated in it. All right. Then Capricorn, the slum. If Saturn got it, if Mars got the jungle, well, Saturn got it even worse. This is the worst place you could think of, and it is in fact owned by Saturn. But who would you think would be exalted in the slum? And the picture should give you a little clue.
I say Mars too.
Mars is exalted. Why is that? See, the slum is where Mars
It likes war.
grows up. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. It likes war. It creates slums, right, through devastation and war. But it's also because it's where Mars grew up, and you got to punch other kids in the face, and you had to survive. You had to learn to survive. And when Mars is in here he feels, and in the slum, in a sense, there's no rules. There's only the law of the jungle, right? He can do anything. Even on the battlefield, he's limited by the rules set by the king and by the laws of war. But in the slum, anything goes. And remember, Mars is a tamasic planet, a planet of tamas, of sort of, not of light and balance, but of darkness. And so here he can really express himself. The planet that's debilitated in the slum, of course, is Dr. Phil. He would, this is the worst place for him and for the priest in their robes, because they feel really out of touch. So Jupiter is debilitated in Capricorn. Let's take a quick look at this in the chart. Looking at this chart, which house would Jupiter have to be in to be debilitated? And which house would he have to be in to be exalted? This is the planet Jupiter.
Jupiter is debilitated in the 6th house.
Very good. In this chart, Jupiter would be debilitated in the 6th house because there's Capricorn. Very good. In which house would he be exalted?
4th.
Not the 4th.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The
10th.
Not the 10th.
The 12th. 12th house.
Yes, the 12th house, which is Cancer, which is 180 degrees opposite from his exaltation. Okay? Now, which house would Mars have to be in to be debilitated? Mars is debilitated in Cancer.
The 12th.
So again, he'd have to be in the 12th. All right, now tell me this. Which houses in this horoscope does Mars rule?
The 8th.
The 9th.
He does, in fact, rule the 9th. And why is that?
Because it's in a sign of Aries.
Aries, good. Now, he sits in the 8th. I heard someone say the 8th. He's in the 8th. But the houses he rules are the 9th and which other one?
The 4th. Because of the Scorpio.
Yeah.
Because of Scorpio. Does everyone see that?
Yes.
Very good, very good. So far, which house does Jupiter rule in this horoscope that we just covered? The mountain
The
temple.
12th. Sorry, the 8th.
Well, yes,
The 8th
and
and the 5th.
we haven't covered the 8th, but yes, Jupiter does rule Pisces, but that we just covered specifically, that is, in fact, the 5th house. There is 9, which is Sagittarius, the mountain temple. Does everyone get this?
Mm-hmm.
I know this is complex, and you'll never need your brain gym or crossword puzzles. You can still do them, but doing astrology will give your brain a good needed workout. So if nothing else, Jyotish will keep you young, or at least prevent dementia. All right, very good. So let's keep going here. We're at Capricorn. 2 more signs. Aquarius is the inventor's attic. Aquarius is the sign that you put everything else that doesn't fit anywhere else. It's quirky. It's owned by Saturn because the butler is the only guy who knows where it is in the castle. And for the same reason, it has no exaltation or debilitation. Because it's just a kind of a secret place where all kinds of cool technology and weird stuff is stored. Like, I had to look for about 20 minutes to find this picture online before I found a picture I really liked. So I hope you appreciate it. All right.
Yes.
Thank you. And finally, we have Pisces, the deserted island. Here is Pisces. Ruled by Jupiter, the counselor, because it's so far away from the kingdom, but he also likes to get away. And exalted there is Venus, as we talked about earlier, that Venus is the princess who likes to get away from it all and really connect with divine beauty. And who do you think would be debilitated in Pisces? Take a guess. I mean, by process of elimination, you could also, yes. So it is, in fact, Mercury. You're right, because Mercury rules what? It rules technology, internet, smartphones. And what do you get with someone stranded on a deserted island? None of that. You have no books to read. You have no phone games to play. This is a nightmare for someone who is ruled by Mercury or is Mercury oriented. So Mercury is debilitated in the chart. At the moment, I don't know that we need to look at Marlon Brando's chart. So we'll squeeze out of here. So that's it. Those are the signs. Let's take one final look at our chart. Today we've covered the planets, and we've also covered which signs are owned by the planets, which signs planets are exalted in, and which signs they're debilitated in. And this is your homework, is to get as much of this down as you can. You don't have to have it all. Take your time, be nice to yourself, but start to work through this information. As a final exercise, as a final quiz, tell me which house would Mercury have to be in to be debilitated?
The 8th.
And can you tell me, is there in this chart a planet that is exalted? You can start with the first house, Rahu. Is Rahu in a sign that he's exalted?
Venus in Pisces in the 8th house.
You guys got Venus. All right, you're way ahead of me. So, okay. I was going to say Rahu in the king's castle in Leo. Well, heck, I know nobody is second to the king, so definitely not. Jupiter in Virgo. Well, I remember Virgo is a civilized city. Only Mercury does well there. So no, Jupiter is not. Saturn in Sagittarius and Moon in Sagittarius. Well, again, Sagittarius is the mountain temple. No planet is exalted or debilitated in the temple. So boom, I can move on. Mercury in Capricorn in the slum. No, I don't remember him being exalted or debilitated there. Sun in Aquarius. He doesn't even know where the inventor's attic is. So the Sun, definitely not. Ketu, no, not Ketu either. Then Mars in Pisces on the deserted island. He's neutral to it. Finally, we come to Venus. In Pisces, yes, exalted. So this is how I would go through every chart and go through and figure out, is this planet strong? And by strong, we mean exalted. So I'm going to write this in our chat here. Strong planet is exalted, own sign, retrograde, or Digbala. We haven't covered Digbala yet. We'll do that next time. And in the case of the moon, a full-ish moon. So we'll add that. A moon that's full-ish is also strong. weak planet is one that is debilitated or a dark moon out of what we've studied so far. We haven't studied combustion. I'll add combustion here. Combustion is very simple. It's the opposite of retrograde. So when a planet is retrograde, it's very bright in the sky. It's because that's when it's closest to the Earth. When a planet is combust, it's closest to the sun, and so it becomes invisible in the sky, and that's when it's farthest from the Earth, generally speaking. So a combust planet, I'll just give you the definition here, is 6 or, here, let me make this into less than 6 degrees from sun. 6 or less degrees from the sun is our definition of combust. Now, 6.5 or 7 degrees, it's still combust, but it's not as, you know, it's not like it turns on at after 6 degrees. These are shades of variation, but definitely 6 degrees or less, a planet is combust. That means in the sign where the sun sits. So here the sun is at 938. So any planet up to 15 degrees would be combust. And over what? About 3 degrees, 338. Okay? So in that range, if there were any planet, it would be combust by the sun. Does this make sense?
Slowly getting it.
Slowly getting it. I know there's a lot, but here's the good part. All the dump of, you know, the download of information is at the beginning. So you're getting a bunch of info dumped on you right now. And you got to just kind of sort it out. But as we move forward, it's all about using this information. So at a certain point, you stop getting the info download, and it's more about now interpreting. So, yeah, this is the intensive part about memorizing.
Simon, I have a question. Where do we get the charts?
Which charts?
You mentioned homework to use charts to practice. So where do we get that?
Correct. That's a good point. So you would need astrology software. And the software that I use is Parashara's Light. Now, what I can do is I can have I'll call the founder of Parashara's Light and see if they will send out a free version of the program, a trial version to you guys. If you're interested, in an email, send me your address where you'd like that CD or, DVD to be sent, and they'll send it out to you. They also offer a discount for my students of 30% off the software. Now, if you don't like Parashara's or you just don't want to invest in a software, you can go with a free version called Junior Jyotish. Junior Jyotish. And the website for that is www.jyotishtools.com. They also have a paid version, which is about $50, which is a reasonable, and it's a good software. It's what I used for a long time when I couldn't afford professional software, several years. So you don't need to invest right away, but if you're going to be doing astrology, you should invest, I think, in a professional level software, because you can do all the good stuff that we're going to need to do in looking at game charts, like the KP significators, which you see here, and so on. But yeah, so send an email to me, siddhadeva@yahoo.com, and give me your address, and I'll forward that info to Mikhail, who is the founder of Prashna's Light, and he'll hopefully they'll send you guys a trial version. He's done that with my other students. Okay.
Simon, I have a question too in relationship to the cusp. When you
Yes.
have in this chart, you have the ascendant at
Yes.
7 degrees. Okay, where I understand that when it is in a sign, the house is, for example, the ascendant is in Leo, it's within a constellation of Leo. But
Correct.
where does the cusp start?
Yeah, so imagine Leo as Leo has, every sign has 30 degrees. So imagine on the horizon, and let's see if I could turn on my camera, see if this maybe will make sense more. All right. So let's say this is the horizon, and my hand is the sign Leo, okay? So as you're looking to the east, here's Leo rising, right? Over the horizon. Well, in Vedic astrology, we need the precise time of birth to know exactly when the person was born. And at this moment, only about 14, let's say it's 14 degrees of Leo had risen, the first 14 degrees. So that's the cusp, 14 degrees Leo. If more had risen, then 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 30. And now the next sign, Virgo, comes up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. So my question is really, how is it possible that one can have an ascendant, let's say at 26 degrees Scorpio, and Jupiter also in the first house at 6 degrees Scorpio?
Good question, right. So in Vedic astrology, the cusp shows us the exact point of the sign rising, but the whole sign is taken as the first house. So even if 1 degree of Leo peaked out or of Scorpio, then the whole of Scorpio is the first house. That's called whole sign astrology versus a house system. So in Western astrology, your Jupiter would be in the 12th.
That's right.
Yeah. So this is one of the features of standard Western Vedic astrology, is that if a planet is in the sign, it's in that house. This is also how, for example, Robert Hand, one of the greatest Western astrologers ever, and currently alive, this is how he does astrology too, Western astrology. He takes that Jupiter to be in your first house.
Right. So is a cusp of the second house out in this particular chart here that you've got up, is the cusp of the second house at 7 degrees?
No, it is in fact, so you can see it just below. It is, I use the Placidus house system. So here is the second cusp. Oops. At 13 degrees Virgo.
Yep.
And it is identical, so just to answer your question even more thoroughly, if I can, it is identical with, I won't go into exact to launch a new program, with the Western cusp. Okay, good.
No, thank you very much.
All right, you bet. All right, any other questions before we sign off here today?
This has been very helpful, Simon. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I have a quick question
Good.
for you.
Yes.
We spoke about, for example, Scorpio being ruled by Mars and not using Pluto. But I do see that on some of the past charts that you presented, you do have Pluto, you do have some of those other Uranus. So when do you use it? You don't use it for rulership of the sign. So when and how do you use it?
Exactly. Great question. So here you can see in my preferences, I can click Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. I can also use the Vedic sub-planets. Click yes. And there they are in the chart. Let me get rid of all this green stuff here. I use them. It depends on what your purpose is. In natal charts, when an outer planet conjoins an inner planet, it will tend to influence it quite significantly. For example, look at here. We have Mars and Uranus together, within 3 degrees of each other. This Uranus is going to influence Mars's meanings. So here would be one way. Mars rules the 9th house in this horoscope. If this were a person's chart I were reading, Mars rules Aries, right? Aries is the 9th house. Because now Mars is influenced by Uranus, I would say you do not belong to the religion in which you were born. The 9th house is your philosophical system and religion.
Yeah.
Because it's influenced by Uranus, the planet of eccentricity, rebellion, difference, this person, I guarantee you, would not be of the same religion into which they were born. They would be Buddhist or something outside of their birth religion. Now you can arrive at this without using the outer planet simply by going, hey, the ruler of the 9th, the house of religion, is in the 8th, the house of the opposite of religion, the cave, the iconoclastic, the person who does things their own way. So we still arrive at the same conclusion, but the outer planets in this case help me. If I'm looking at game charts, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto have an effect when they sit on the cusp. So if I have Neptune on the cusp, right on the ascendant degree or the 7th house cusp, it's going to influence the way that team plays. Okay? So that's how I use the outer planets.
Okay.
Did that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. They're just not in relationship. They're not owning any particular sign, but you use
not in Vedic astrology, because we find that the visible planets as rulers work just fine in Vedic astrology.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, and here's what I'll do. I will send, let's see, or maybe I'll just make available the PDF document that we used for the rulership of the planets, and I'll make that available on the website when the video goes up so everyone can reference it. And
That's
again,
great. Thank
Yeah,
if you
that
have
would
any,
be helpful.
excellent. If you have any questions, you can feel free to email me. And oh, one last thing, the next class we're going to do is this Friday. So today's Tuesday, so Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 3 days from now, because we missed already about a week with last week's class, so I'd like to make that time up. And hopefully that'll work with you guys. I'll send out a full invitation to everyone.
Okay.
All right.
You.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. We'll see you next time.
Merci.
Merci. I'll just say a quick little prayer. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahe Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om.
Hari Om.
All right, guys. See you next time.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.